Yo, what is good, everybody? Yacullo back with my third episode of my podcast. Still don't have a name, but that's not the point. We're here today with Reid Burford, longtime friend since I moved to Benicia, 4 years now. Today we're going to be talking about a lot of things, including his company. So let's kind of talk about that. I have a lot of questions about that. I think, well, let me say this. You've been in like newspapers and you've had news articles about your company. That's correct, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's been a lot about it. I just kind of want to readdress it on here. So, what was the inspiration for this company?
So I grew up with two Basset Hounds, and they were always, they were cool dogs because they were brothers
Yeah.
and they could never be separated from each other. And instead of barking, what they do often is they howled.
Hmm.
And I was like, okay, these dogs were a big part of my life when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And when I was about 12, that's when I started drinking real coffee, a little bit with caffeine in it.
Hmm.
And I was pretty interested every time I go to different coffee shops. I was really interested in what the baristas were doing behind the bar, making all of the coffee and the espresso drinks.
Hmm.
And eventually I got interested into roasting coffee too.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to buy my own coffee roaster that I could put in my garage and roast my own coffee. And
Hmm.
eventually I was like, I want to do this as a business. And then I started up when I was 14 out
Yeah.
of my garage and online store.
Now, just answer my one question. I'll just say, what age did you start? That's 14. Now,
Yeah.
at such a young age, how were you able to make this whole business come to fruition? Because at that age, not many people are aware of how to even build an online business. So, how do you go about maneuvering it?
So I definitely am lucky because my dad started his own company a couple years before. He left a company that he worked for a long time, so he was able to give me some kind of guidance on what it takes to get the business license and everything, and setting up, your financial accounts and everything. So I was really lucky that he wanted to help me with that.
Yeah.
And then for my end, I every time I would go to a coffee shop, just kind of to sit down and spend time. Um, uh, Sometimes I would meet the owners of the place and then, saying, I'm kind of interested in roasting coffee and getting into the business too. And so I got advice from them. And yeah, and I used some website building tools out there to build my own website.
Hmm.
I was just kind of going at it and, s- taking it pretty seriously.
Yeah. And that's what I commend you for is you wanted to pursue it, so you went in 100%. And one of the most important and key things I think you were doing was reaching out to other people, because people who have done it already, right? You weren't reaching out to me and saying, yo, can you help me, build this coffee business? I don't know how to do that. But you got to people that already knew what they were doing. And I think that's an important thing for anybody who's trying to pursue a business or any type of job or occupation. Um, is this business still a priority for you? Is it still your top priority, or are there other things going on that you're more focused on?
Well, it's definitely really high on my priority because I do have a lot of customers that are really addicted to coffee and they're dependent on me, sort of. So it's my guarantee that if they place an order online, I go out to my garage and I roast it to them, and either I deliver it myself within town or I mail it off
Hmm.
to another state. So yeah, I do have quite a few customers in various states across the country that order on a regular basis. So I gotta make sure that I'm keeping them happy and I'm supplying them with coffee.
Now, are you content with where the business is at right now? Are you trying to like expand that, or would you prefer to have like a second business and kind of have two versus like one bigger business?
So for right now, I've been keeping it small the entirety within high school because I knew that eventually I would have to go off to college, which I'm doing this fall. I'm going to Oregon State.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so, I'm definitely going into business major. And the big thing at Oregon State is that they will actually help their students kind of run their own businesses and get it going, and you can collaborate in teams on it. And so I always knew that's the direction I wanted to go down and kind of continue to run it.
That's actually very cool. I didn't know that. So that actually kind of affects my next question, because I was going to say, as you can see in your background, Oregon State is everywhere. That's your dream
Oh, yeah.
school. Now that you've gotten into your dream school, is there sort of like a what now? like what do I do now? Because you kind of accomplished what you worked for all 4 years. Is there like a sense of like what do I do now? Like what's the goal?
Well, a little bit. I still have to, put my education first. And as soon as I get there, I'm still going to have to work out the whole first year, get your mandatory classes out of the way.
Mm.
And so right now, the future is looking like, I have to work some things out in order to get this business moved up to Oregon to where I can run it while still working on my degree.
Yeah.
And my college of business has been, they've been saying that they're able to help out a bunch of students on running their own companies.
Now, with all these priorities that you have to deal with now going off to college, will running remain one of your priorities or will that fall versus where you had it in high school?
So in high school, of course, I was running on varsity, and Oregon State doesn't actually have a official men's cross country team because of Title IX. So they have a running club that also runs competitively, and
Mm-hmm.
so I'm definitely going to be putting my academics first as always. But that's definitely something I want to keep doing because running is a great way for me to relax and take my mind off of things when I'm stressed, and it's a big part of my life that I discovered during high school. So I
Yeah.
definitely want to keep it going.
So then at this point, is it more of a love for the sport of running or a love for being the best? Because for me, throughout high school, I aspired to be the best, and that's why I love running because I was very good at it, and we won races. So do you kind of still, want that type of competitive feel?
Well, I think anything that you get into, if you're passionate about it, then you should also be passionate about being the best
Hmm.
at it. Why put half of your effort into something that you like? Then what's even the point of doing it? You put
Yeah,
your full effort into everything. You aspire to be the best in everything.
yeah. So then, with that being said, now our season has been cut short, unfortunately. We got a few meets in. How are you adjusting to life in quarantine, and how do you feel about track being cut short when we were looking forward to it?
Well, it was super disappointing because I was looking forward to breaking some time goals. I was hoping to qualify for some meets, and of course, they've all been canceled. So it's really disappointing that I wasn't able to do that my senior year. But then again, all of us seniors are in the same boat when it comes to that. And so I know there's nothing I can do about it, control the controllables. So
Mhm.
I'm just looking forward to what the future has to offer. And I'm aspiring towards that, knowing that I can't really control much about the past and what's happening in the present right now.
So, yep. And as of right now, are you still running? Are you still training as if there were to be a season, or have you kind of taken this time off?
So I haven't been running every single day, but I've been running about 4 days a week. I went on a run yesterday afternoon after it cooled down, and I'm actually going to be going on one uh, in a little bit. So
Hmm.
I've been focusing more on long runs because I'm a bigger fan of long distance. So I've been doing a couple 7, 8, 10 mile runs around town.
Hmm.
I'm just kind of building up my endurance.
And I think for us, once you started to improve and you made the proper strides, if anyone didn't know, Reid is one of those kids that made an enormous jump from his freshman to his sophomore year. I don't know the exact amount of seconds, but uh, excuse me, I'm pretty sure it was like 30 seconds in the mile, right? Or something close to that.
I think I've taken about a minute off of my mile time since my very first race freshman year in track.
Yeah. So, yeah, that sounds about right because I'm pretty sure you were like 5:30s and now you're 4:30s. So, it just goes to show your work ethic and I think your dedication to the sport. And that's something that nobody can take away from you. And I think that
Yeah.
we both get caught up in, ah, shit, we couldn't get to finish the season, right? You wanted to go like 420 and I wanted to go like sub two or like low twos and eight. And I think we just have to be proud of ourselves and how far we've come and how hard you worked. Because imagine if you didn't give it 100% and you might not even like broken five, right? And now imagine
Yeah.
430. So One thing I've always commended about you is your work ethic, which is very similar to mine. And I think it's something that sets us apart from others and makes us different. And I think you can also that's also displayed like in your business, right? Because nobody else is starting a business at 14, or very little people are, and
Right.
running it basically alone. So, do you think that like at all you were like viewed differently by other people because you were aspiring to do such big things at such a young age?
Well, definitely. I've always, a a few other people and myself have always, I've considered myself a little more mature than a few
Mm,
people my age. You
definitely.
know, some people are really focused on partying it up. And even though I like to have fun with my friends every once in a while, you know, I got to have to think logically and make good decisions. And I think, running a business and staying on top of running and academics is a great way to do that. So,
Mm-hmm.
definitely, I think a lot of people have looked at me a little differently because I have my own business. I think
Yeah.
some people might be intimidated to talk to me, which is totally not the case.
Yeah. Um, I agree. And um, the thing that you said, like not doing drugs, not partying, no alcohol or anything like that, I can relate to that because I've lived that for my whole life without any of that. And I think that's something that I try to pass on to other people, not necessarily this whole audience, but a lot of people, especially close to me. How important is that message to you of being like clear minded all the time, making sure your decisions are logical and, you're not under the influence or anything like that?
I've heard, a lot of bad stories about bad things happening to people
Hmm.
or decision that they didn't think much of
Yeah.
kind of changed their entire life. And so
Uh-huh.
I don't want that event to come up where, I'm thinking, oh, it's just one little thing, and then it turns into something that changes my life.
Yeah. And that's something I always tell people is you never know what's going to happen, right? So you
Right.
have to, it's okay to, take risks sometimes and be adventurous, but be smart when you do it, right? Because even a story like Kobe Bryant, and his death and his tragic death,
Yeah.
he didn't know that getting on an airplane that day or the helicopter, a task so simple that he has done all the time, would result in his death. And it's everybody, crazy shit happens in the world. And I think you have to really think, don't overthink, but you have to think about the consequences that your decisions can have. And I think you do a very good job at that, I will say. But um, I do want to bring up a story about you, but I don't know the full details. So you're gonna have to help me out with this. So, your car, did you pay the full price or did you split half the price for your car that you own right now?
I split half of the price. So, in second grade, one of the local banks came up to my elementary school
Mm-hmm.
and they were encouraging us to open our little savings accounts. And once a week, a representative from the bank would be there to where you could deposit your money. And I followed that the entire time.
Yep.
And so I knew that eventually I would want to buy my own car to drive during high school.
Yep.
So I paid half of my car, and my parents were willing to match me on the other half.
Mhm. And
Yeah.
that's crazy because how old were you when you did that? 16, 15?
I was about to be 16.
Yeah. And now I've just turned 18 and I'm going to do the same thing with my dad 2 years later. So it's just, it's looking at it like I'm a little behind the game on, my car and whatnot, but to see how far ahead of the game you were, it's insane because you're almost ahead of the game in all aspects.
I've
Like,
always wanted to drive, that's for
yeah.
sure.
And why was that? Was it just like a sense of freedom or
I don't
maturity?
know. Partly because it's a sense of freedom, but also because it was, viewed as an adult thing. And when I was little, I always wanted to do all of the adult things. I
Mhm.
wanted to, cook my own food in the kitchen. I was a character when I was little, and driving was a part of that. I
Uh-huh.
felt like I, you should have been able to drive. And
Yeah.
so as soon as, I was legally able,
Mhm.
the day I was eligible, I went in and I took my permit test.
Mhm.
And then 6 months later, I took my driver's test just because I've always been kind of excited about it.
Yeah. And for me, I was the exact opposite. I'm pretty sure I waited a year to take my permit test, and you know that you made fun of me for that. But it is what it is. It really, for me, I just didn't want to take the class, right? It wasn't a sense of I didn't want to be an adult because it is an adult thing. I think it's viewed like that by many people. I didn't have like a fear of like growing up or being mature or being an adult. I just didn't want to take that class like for 30 hours. Like it's just,
Yeah.
but you did say that you look forward to being adult and being mature. Do you think you're gonna ever regret that, or do you think that you prefer to be viewed as mature, or you view yourself as mature?
I mean, so far I haven't really regretted that. I know a lot of people have told me, you can only be a kid for so long.
Hmm.
And looking back on my childhood, it was pretty fun, but it happens to everyone.
Hmm.
And I still enjoyed my childhood quite a bit.
Yeah.
And so maybe as I get older, I might regret it. I'm not sure yet.
Mhm.
But as of now, I've been, you know, pretty proud of kind of the decisions I made in the past to
Yeah,
kind of.
most definitely. And I think that people don't choose not to be mature. They're just incapable of being mature. And your ability to be mature at such a young age, even in second grade, choosing to start putting money in for your car, it's such a crazy decision because if a second grader would say that, people would be like, who the fuck is this guy? Like, what is he thinking? Right? Like,
Yeah.
it's not a bad idea, right? It's a great idea.
This
That's
is
why,
not a lot of thing that most second graders think about.
exactly. In second grade, I was trying to beat my best friend Luke and see who could get the most A's in the marking period. And honestly, he's about to be on the podcast tomorrow, and I might ask him about that because I think he beat me. But I think that brings us back to our competitive nature and running for 4 years together. I mean, really three because that first year we didn't ever run a race together. But what motivated you to be better? Was it to go to state? Was it to win state? Was it, or was it just to be the best on your team? Or, what motivated you to really start working at running and wanting to get a lot better?
Well, so originally I was a baseball player, and as I was getting through middle school, I was a little less motivated from it. I really liked it when I was little, but you know, it wasn't. I had some troubles with my arm because I was a pitcher,
Yeah.
and so I knew that if I were to continue playing baseball, that things probably wouldn't have ended up where I wanted them to be. And
Hmm.
so I was like, okay, I'm kind of a decent runner, I think. So I joined the cross country team freshman year, not knowing anything about running,
Yeah.
and having with it being my sport now,
Hmm.
seeing one of the seniors on the team, Lewis, running the crazy fast times that he did going to state, I thought, man, that's pretty cool. I kind of want to be like him.
Hmm.
And
And
so just one step at a time.
yeah, Lewis was an inspiration for me as well. Um, he kind of took me under his wing my freshman year. I think you can recall that, and
Yeah.
that meant a lot to me because it made me feel like he believed in me, and everyone else, they were all like, "Oh, you're gonna be the next Lewis and whatnot," and it put pressure on me. Yeah, but learning from Lewis and like it allowed me to see that he was human, right? And then once we got here and we were in the fours and running low 800 times, and it was like every runner's human, like they're not like bionic, and that's something I had
Yeah.
to learn because I thought Lewis was always like bionic, and running is like you have to be mentally strong. Mental beats physical and running any day, and that's something that I started to develop, especially this past year. And you've had it, and I think that comes along with your maturity as well. And I just it's kind of taught me to love the sport for what it is because if you don't know, I don't think I'm running farther than the high school level. I think I'm just going to start focusing on myself and building myself and learning more about building businesses and things like that. So, but that love for running will always remain in me. Um, do you feel that way as well? So that no matter what you go on to do, that love for the sport will remain within you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've seen, the senior Olympics where there's 95 and 100-year-olds sprinting on the track,
Yeah.
and, I aspire to be like them too. Being that old,
Yeah.
and life is pretty short, but taking care of yourself, and I think living the best life you can.
Hmm.
And so, for that love of running, that's always going to be in me. I know it's something healthy that I can do. Every time I'm stressed, I can just go out and run.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I think some people who, hate running, I think that once they try it out or just kind of change their outlook on it, that they might find a love for running too that might stick with them.
I think it's getting over that initial hump, right? Because
Yeah.
for me, I didn't, I just was running around all the time, like playing like tag and shit and growing up. So
Yeah.
then once, and I told this story in my last podcast with my friend Josh, because he's the one that really introduced me to running. Because in PE, um, we'd have to do this like 3/4 mile run, right? Similar to what you guys did in your middle school. And I was just always running, right? I wasn't like sprinting, I was just going. And that's where I met my friend Josh, and he was like, "Yo, you should try out for, or you should join the cross country team," right? He was like, "You're fast," and that's kind of where that whole thing started. And I think it's just crazy to see the stories, especially in the memories that come from running, and then seeing how that evolves into a love, and then how that lasts forever.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what I love the most about the sport. And even though I might not continue, I probably won't continue on with it. How it'll last forever in my life, and how I'll be able to look up on that and remember my teams that I was a part of, and those races that we always talk about, and that mile against Diego where you passed him at the end, and I was
Yeah.
throwing shit up everywhere, and it's just times you can't get back. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
So, um, what do you think that running has taught you the most? Like, what's the biggest lesson you've learned from the sport?
Oh, that's a difficult thing to think
Mhm.
of because I think since I started running on the cross country team freshman year, that it's really changed things a lot for me. Um, Something that really wasn't in the nature of baseball, but I discovered in running is just how supportive your teammates can be and other schools can be. And that taught me a lot about how I interact with other people.
Mhm.
And always be supportive of them and never be negative.
Yep.
And that's part of it, of just finding, being able to make these connections and make new friends that just by changing your outlook on how you should be positive and not negative.
Yep. And I agree with that completely.
Yeah.
And mine kind of goes along the lines of that. Of I learned how to be a leader, and I learned how to inspire others, and to really be a team player and stop looking individually, because for so long I just wanted to run this time or have this accolade or reach this milestone. But then once I got to high school, I wanted our team to win. I wanted us to win, us too. And it kind of taught me that it's not just about you, it's about the people that you can help grow along the way, right? Because my last year, it didn't become about me being the best. It was about helping, someone like Blake believe that he could do it, so that in his last year he could come strong and, hopefully go to state like he hopes, which I think he will. I believe in him.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. And like you said, the thing about running is they really are the nicest, most supportive people, regardless of win or lose, first and last.
Everyone's going through the same
Pain.
thoughts and pain during the course, and acknowledging that on yourself and knowing that everyone else is going through the same thing kind of brings out your support for others.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think it's not always displayed, right? But I think we did a good job in particular of displaying respect, not just for us, but for our teammates as well. I mean not just for our teammates, but our opponents as well. And, always shaking hands before and after, just simple things that really do go a long way.
Yeah. Good luck and good job.
Yep. That's really all there is to it, right? And, good job with the high five, good luck with the handshake, boom, right?
Yep.
And it just shows a level of respect that I think should be showed on every level of life, because people every day are working their ass off to get somewhere, and people constantly judge them for that. It's and that's the message I'm trying to bring up, is not to push people down with negativity, but to bring them up with positivity. Because for so long people are pushed down to believe that they can't, do this or do that, run this time, own this business. My goal is to bring them up and make them believe that they can.
Yeah.
So I think running is a great sport for anybody who doesn't have a sport, who wants to do anything in quarantine. Start running, right? And when you're going out, are you wearing masks, or you just kind of send it?
So I do take a mask with me when I'm running. When there's no one else around, of course, I don't wear it because it does kind of restrict my breathing.
Mhm.
But if I'm, relatively close to someone on the trail and I'm not able to run across the street to socially distance from them, then I will pull it up and, kind of wave to them as they go by,
Mhm.
just to keep myself safe out there and keep everyone else safe during this time because you never know who they've been in contact with, what I might have picked up somewhere. So you got to take the precautions when you're going outside. I'm lucky enough to have a treadmill at home.
Yeah, me too.
So I will always run on the treadmill if I don't want to go outside and take that risk.
Hmm. That's what we did when it smoked, right? When there was the fires and there was smoke. And I think, it's all about safety and being safe and putting yourself in a position to be safe, but not just you, others too. And I think people, not necessarily people that we know, but people all around the world are disregarding that, right? And I saw this thing, and south of us, people are still going to beaches, right? And
Yeah.
even though they're staying 6 feet apart, or they were supposedly staying 6 feet apart, it's still putting a lot more people at risk versus staying at home and then occasionally, going outside having the mask on, right?
And it adds up too with all of those people 6 feet apart at the beach. It's
Yeah.
kind of counterintuitive because your breath is still going to be
Mhm.
traveling through the air. You never know what you're going to pick up when there's so many other people there.
Yeah, I don't get it.
Mm,
But another thing I did want to say is, on my podcast earlier today, which I mentioned like 10 times, but if you haven't seen it, you should go watch it. Um, he was talking about his swim team, right? They have a swim team back at my old school, and all of them got sick kind of like in January. So the coronavirus started to like build its way up, in December, January, February, and then it hit us in March, right? So he was talking, and one of the kids on the team got tested for the flu because he thought they all had the flu, but it didn't. They didn't have the flu. So later, it kind of surfaced that the symptoms that they were having were the same symptoms of the coronavirus. So they think that they might have had even the coronavirus and they didn't even know it, which is crazy to think about for athletes, right? Whose immune systems are very strong, but they might not even know that they're sick with the coronavirus, right?
yeah.
It's so crazy how the whole thing works, and how people are, you know not even noticing that there's a possibility that they may have it.
Yeah. Back during January, most of us just thought that it was still in China.
Yeah. Mhm.
It was crazy how, if that was the case, that coronavirus was really around the United States in January, it's crazy how much it spread because
Yeah.
we were practicing the social distancing
Mm.
back then.
um One thing I do want to talk about just real quick is our last meet before we got put into lockdown like 2 days later, right? And school got canceled. It was the
Yeah.
meet against College Park. and there was no spectators. And I thought it was very interesting because now stuff is kind of sort of starting to reopen, right? In certain parts around the world, restaurants, whatnot, stores. Um, do you think that sports should come back without fans in the arena, and they should just have those healthy athletes competing in an arena or in a ring or whatever it is?
Well, I definitely think the process has to be slow once we start reopening because just how much damage that it has done to the world. And I think we have to take a lot more caution in cleaning everything, sanitizing everything because it's really easy. It's kind of an awakening of how, people in cities are living in kind of unsanitary
Yeah,
conditions. And so, eventually hopefully the arenas and the stadiums will be full again. But I think this is for everyone that has experienced this, it's definitely going to change their lives forever.
mm,
How they interact with other people, how they, you know, stuff like that.
most definitely. And there's been reports everywhere. I don't know what's real anymore, but people have talked about the quarantine being over in May, mid-May. I personally think that it's going to last till at least July. And I think that's because I think we need to be as safe as possible with this. And people are still sick with the virus, right? So I think we need to really limit its exposure, because if we let people back out in mid-May and people still have it and people are still, touching each other and they're not social distancing, then it's going to spread even worse and then even more people are going to have it, which is going to
Mhm.
put us in lockdown even longer, probably like a year, you know,
Mhm.
because we've already been in for what, 3 months already, and people are like, oh my God, this is hell. And it's, you have to continue. If you push through 6 months, that prevents it from being a year. And I
Yeah.
think people don't really recognize that. But another thing I wanted to ask you real quick was, how productive do you think you're being in quarantine versus when you were not in quarantine? Are you being more productive, less productive, the same?
So I've still been running my coffee company because there's a bunch of people, even more people now that are making coffee at home instead of going to their coffee shops like they used to. So I'm still very productive in my business. I'm still relatively productive in running and in my schoolwork too.
Mm-hmm.
My teachers are still assigning work and having them do it a specific time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know if I get that out of the way, not being at school for 7 hours a day, and
Yeah.
then I've during the busiest times of the track season, I wasn't really that home much during the day just to wake up, get ready, and then eat dinner, do homework, and go to sleep. And
Mm-hmm.
so staying at home has definitely changed. I've been cleaning different parts of the house that I haven't really paid much attention to. I've
Mm-hmm.
been cleaning some old things out of my room to get ready to move out this
Mm-hmm.
summer.
Yeah.
But it's definitely made me more productive around the house. And also with the steps of going to college, I've uh, started some group chats with some people that are going to college with me. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of screen time, definitely talking to
Yeah.
them. But and that's really the most we can do when we're inside.
And I agree. I think that screen time will be up for everybody, but actually, my screen time hasn't been up. It's actually been down. But for a lot of people, I think screen time is up for the reason of TikTok.
Oh,
But,
definitely, yeah.
but I think it needs to be up for the reason of learning and growing. So there's kind of like a screen time is allowed to be up, like most definitely. I don't blame you if your screen time's up, but it needs to be, something like you were doing, communicating with people that you're about to go to school with, which is a very cool thing that I think anyone who's nervous about going on to college and, not really having, friends or being alone or anything like that, I think that's very important to do.
Yeah.
You did that on Facebook, right?
Yeah, I started on Facebook and then someone there messaged me and said, "Hey, do you want to be a part of this group me?" And I said, "Sure." And
Mm-hmm.
so I was added to that. And then someone said, "Hey, we're going to start a group on Snapchat." And I was like, "Sure." And then we're in that. And last night, I was talking with them on a Zoom meeting for a couple hours, just getting to know each other and talking about stuff, playing online games. And so, yeah, it's been an opportunity for me to make friends with people that, I'm going to be seeing for the next 4 years of my life.
Yeah, that's actually very cool. And I think that it's crazy to see how that kind of spreads, right? Because you started one on Facebook, and then group me, it kind of was like, oh, we already got one here, you want to join that, right? And then it
Yeah.
evolved to Snapchat, and like, just to show how much social media has grown and how impactful it is in today's society. I think that it's crazy to see the positives that we can use it for, but then also on the flip side, there's negatives, and it's just, it goes back to the whole positive negative thing, right? And it's just the whole world, there's you're either positive or you're either negative, and it's just,
Yeah.
I'm trying to flip the negative people to positive and get the positive people to not be affected by the negative. And it's a big task, but it's something I'm definitely trying to do. And we've been on here for a while. I think that would be good to wrap it up for today. But I do have one more question for you, and it might be looking too far ahead, but it's, what are your plans after OSU? All right, so you go to Oregon State University. Do you have any idea or a path of like kind of where you want to go after that?
Yeah. So when I was doing my college tours last year, I also toured the University of Washington in Seattle,
Mm-hmm.
and I really liked that campus too and their business school. And so I'm thinking of getting my MBA there during college, kind of studying, get ready to get my MBA,
Mm-hmm.
because I think that would definitely open a lot more opportunities
Yeah.
with what I can work with. And owning that coffee company of mine is still a huge goal and aspiration that I've had, but who knows what more opportunities will open for me.
Yeah, but I think that's a great idea. And it's great that you have that just to open your opportunities, right?
Right.
So thank you for coming on. That's all I got for you. If there's
Thank you
anything
for
you
having
want
me.
to talk about, if you're good. I think you could definitely be on again in the future, right? And I think there's so much more that we could talk about, but I think 40 minutes or so or around there is a good time to end it. Um, like I said, thank you for coming on.
Yeah.
Um, I just got started with this, with the audiences. Um, so I'm not really the best with podcasts, but I'm kind of learning how to maneuver it and make the whole thing flow. And I think it did flow pretty well. I think it went pretty good at working on transitions and things like that. But as time goes on, I'll get better. So
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm happy with how this turned out, and I appreciate you for coming on. I'll talk to you soon. All right.
All right. Thank you for having me again.
No problem. All right. Peace, guys.
See you later.